Hello, I'm recording. Welcome to the first episode of Remap Your Life. I am joined by Jacqueline Hollows, who's the founder of Beyond Recovery. And I'd just like her to talk through. Jacqueline started out as prior to becoming the founder of Beyond Recovery, she was an IT manager. And Jacqueline, could you tell me how you managed to transition from a role that you're very comfortable in to the founder of Beyond Recovery, working in a field that you didn't have any experience of prior to starting it?
Yeah. So I love the idea of this remap your life. It's a really cool thing. So yeah, as you point out, my whole career was in IT. I'd been doing it for 20 years or something. My degrees and all my qualifications were in that field. I fell into that field by accident. I was working in I was working in a builder's merchants, and as a data input clerk in the old days, you used to sell things over the counter on pieces of paper, and then those pieces of paper would come to an office, and then usually a bunch of women would take those and type them into the computer. And so I used to do that. And a job came up in the computer room, which I thought was really glamorous. And I got on with the manager there, and she said, go for it. And so I went for that job. I'm telling you this because there is a point. So I went for that job, and I was 20 at the time. And I don't even think there was a Windows 3.1 in them days. So yeah, that was a big revolution when that came in. So all the computer systems, they were having everything made bespoke, like it was tailor-made for that builders merchants. Anyway, I went for this job interview, and the really horrible general manager of the builders merchant said, he was just so scathing. And he said, look, if this fails, you won't get your old job back. And I said, well, I don't want it back. Thanks very much. And so I got the job, and I worked really hard at it, but I had a sense of like imposter syndrome. I had a sense of I shouldn't really be there, and I had to really work harder than anybody else to prove that I should be there. And so I stuck at it for way longer than I should have done. And one day I woke up and thought, do you know what? I think I can do better than this. And I tried to get other jobs elsewhere. And at this point, the Windows 3.1 was out, and most of the places had Windows, and I didn't know anything about Windows. So I couldn't get another job anywhere else. So I thought, okay, well, I'll go and get a qualification. And I went to night school, got some night school qualifications, and then I went to university and I got a computer science degree. And that's when I became more in my own confidence. So I thought, do you know what? Like, I've sat with consultants that were getting paid thousands of pounds a day, and I was getting minimum wage, and they were rubbish. I thought, do you know what? I could do that. And so I turned myself into an IT consultant. And I went to the firm that I was doing a part-time job with. It was a glass company. They manufactured glass. And I said, I've noticed loads of inefficiencies in your business. Could I do a proposal where I could improve your IT systems? And they said yes. And so then all of a sudden I was an IT consultant, and it was just before the year 2000. And so there was a lot of fear around at that time. And that's how I did that. And again, I stuck at that for many, many years, even though I actually didn't like it that much. And I did project management, and I did all sorts of things, and I sort of clawed my way up the ladder, eventually becoming head of customer services and head of operations and customer services at a premium finance company. And I was managing a team of people up in Leeds, and they were all really clever software developers. And again, I thought, what am I doing here? You know, I don't understand any of this, but I did my best. And but I found out that I was really good with people. Like, I just wasn't that good at computers. I mean, I'm okay, you know, I get by, but I was really good with people. And so the firm went into liquidation, and they made everybody redundant. And most of those people had been 2P'd across from another organisation, and most of them had never had, this was their second job, you know, so they hadn't gone for interviews for 10 years or something like that. So they were all really frightened. And I just started coaching them and helping them with interviews, because we had 3 months before the company closed. So I just started helping them get jobs and coaching them. I didn't know that's what I was doing, but, you know, that's what I was doing. I know this is very long-winded answer. Okay. And then because of that, I realized I was looking for other jobs of a similar nature and a similar salary. And I'd fall asleep before I'd finish the job spec. You know, I'd be like, oh, I really don't want to do that. Kate knows how that feels. And I just kept thinking, well, how am I going to get this salary? And I really reflected during that time. And I also happened to have a lot of personal stuff going on. My father was dying of cancer. He hadn't been in touch for many years, and so we sort of reunited for 5 months, and lots of other things were going on. And I really took the time to reflect, and I thought, I don't even like doing this. Why am I looking for another job? The only thing I like is the status. I'm the head of operations and IT and customer services, and I like the salary, and I didn't like anything else about it at all, but I did like the people. So I thought maybe I should go into something more to do with people than to do with computers. And I started retraining. So I did all sorts of courses, anything with a 3-letter acronym. I did it, NLP, EFT, you know, all of that, and counselling. And when I'd gone to university many years earlier, I'd taken a psychology / computer science degree. And I hated psychology. And so I'd switched to ergonomics. And the reason why I hated psychology is, to me, it looked like there was no real answer. So if someone came to you with a problem, there was no actual, like with maths or with computers, there's an answer. There's always an answer. And to me, it looked like with psychology, there was no answer. So I completely didn't want to do that at all. So fast forward these many years later, and I'm doing all these different things. I felt the same. Like, I felt like, yeah, NLP sort of works in some situations, but it doesn't solve everything. And EFT, some people like it, but, you know, and I kept trying these different things. And I actually went to do Michael Neal's Super Coach, and I didn't do it to become a coach. I did it because it was in LA and it sounded fun and sexy and exciting. And I just thought, whatever I am at the end of it, I'll have 6 months, you know, have a really good time for 6 months. And I had to sell like some stuff to be able to afford to go and do it, because it's really expensive, and you had to travel as well. And so I took a part-time job as a project manager in and got paid a really good like daily rate, so that I could afford to do all this traveling. And I did absolutely love doing that. And it's through that I met the Free Principles. And the Free Principles at the time, Michael wasn't teaching it fully, and I hated it. And I thought, well, I definitely don't want to do that. You know, they're all them culty people. And so I came back, and then I set myself up as an executive coach. So this is who I thought I was then, this executive coach. And I used to get some clients and not very many. And I went to all these networking events and did my 60-second pitch. And I just didn't like any of it. And one day I met someone who was how he termed it, a recovering addict, and he'd been in and out of prison, and he'd been addicted to heroin mainly, but basically he said he didn't have a drug of choice. It's like anything he could get his hands on, and he was the most inspirational person I'd ever met in my life at that time. And I just said, like, how can I help? And he'd set up a company teaching people to make films and write scripts and things like that. And so I just helped him. I volunteered on his board of directors and just really enjoyed doing it. And then I met lots of other people who had addictions and been in prison, and I loved them. I just thought they were amazing, because it was this bunch of people who had incredibly traumatic lives, many of them, incredible difficulties, and they were amazing. They were resilient and creative and determined and passionate. And I noticed that they didn't know that. So I could see all of these incredible, beautiful people, and they didn't feel like that. They didn't feel good enough. They felt unworthy. They felt the stigma that society puts on people who are marginalised, and they felt guilt and, you know, all sorts of things like that. And I thought, I can help them, because they don't need to feel like that. And it seemed to me that, because we can circle back round now to the 3 principles, and it seemed to me that they taught me about the 3 principles, because I would sit with somebody and be saying, you know, like, just be talking to them about how amazing they were and what I was seeing, and day after day, and people just kept coming to me. People just kept turning up and asking me to talk at things. And one day I thought, if they're all perfect and beautiful and amazing, maybe I am too. And so I realized myself through them, and I was doing various jobs at the time, and I was working in an estate agent, and in my spare time I was researching addiction, because I was so fascinated that these people were being told that they were diseased and that they had to go to meetings for the rest of their life, and it just intuitively didn't seem right to me. I didn't realize that that was what the 3 principles understanding was about. I just felt intuitive about it, and I kept reading things, and I kept thinking, someone needs to do something about this. And then I read something else, someone needs to tell these people, someone needs to do something about this. And now it feels like I kept saying it out loud and no one was listening. And I'd go to meetings and network events and things like that, and like tell people, well, someone needs to do something about it, and no one was listening. And then one day I thought, well, maybe it's me. So I thought, well, what would it look like then if I wasn't just doing this voluntary? What would it look like if I put my business head towards it? And so then I started really looking for, can I get into addiction centres, and wrote programs and did all of that. And everyone said no, everyone turned me down. No one was interested, but I didn't really care, because I'd got a part-time job as a project manager, so I was paying my bills, so that was good. That was like one day a week, and the rest of the time it felt like I was playing, and I was playing in an arena that I just really loved. And meanwhile I'd done a few talks at a recovery community, and people just kept turning up and saying, can you help me? And I had all these thoughts, rules. So I'd have this rule of, I'll only work with people who are 5 years in recovery. And then my friend would phone and say, oh, I've got this chap who's just come out of detox. Can you help him? And of course, I'm not going to say no. So every single rule and barrier really that I put in place got knocked down along the way. And I got to see that it's all made up. And you just do what you're meant to be doing, and you just keep showing up for that. And then it wasn't really going anywhere. I think, I did get a little bit of funding to trial at some places, but sort of, which worked and was good, but I wasn't really getting any traction with any of these big addiction companies. And then one day I was introduced to the service manager in a prison in the Midlands, and I eventually got a meeting with him, and there's sort of quite a story there, but he then said, yeah, we'll trial this, we'll do a 12-week pilot. And I went away and I wrote this proposal for a 12-week pilot and agonized over it, and got it off to him. And then he rang me up and he said, the committee have looked at it, the mental health team love it, but the psychologists not so much. And I was just like, wow, the mental health team are looking at my proposal about talking about how to do workshops for the 3 principles for people in prison. I was just like thrilled at every step of the way. It didn't feel like a burden or difficult for me. And then I said, okay, well, what do you need me to do? And he said, well, we need you to like include any research that there is available. But also, there is, could you do it for 12 months instead of 12 weeks? And the joke is that I always say to people, so I looked at my calendar, like my empty calendar. Oh, I'll just check. And I said, oh, well, yeah, I think so. And I came off the phone. I thought, wow, even just the possibility of that was enough. I celebrated the possibility of it and the potential of it. So then I spent another couple of months agonizing over, because he said, can you write a business case? I said, yeah, of course. And then I thought, what's a business case? Like, what does it have? And so I actually wrote back to him and said, what titles would you expect there to be in a business case? And he gave me the structure, and I wrote a business case and actually sent it to him and said, can you let me know if there's anything else that needs to be in here? And I did not know how to write a business case. So I Googled that, and there wasn't really much research. So this is like 6 years ago now. But any research there was, I found it. And I wrote this business case, and I sent it in to the prison in December 2014. And I didn't even have a business at that point. It was just me. And he came back in the January, and the commissioner read it, and the commissioner got an insight from reading the business case. And he said, we need this. We need this everywhere. And so they took me on for 12 months. I won a massive contract in the prison. So I thought I better set up a business. And I had been researching how you set up a social enterprise, and I'd been having some mentoring around that from an organisation in Birmingham. So yeah, so I set up the social enterprise, and made that all proper, and got a bank account and things, and started working in the prison. So it stemmed from there. And I know that's a really long story, but I really wanted to say is that it's so easy to take one piece of your story and go, wow, you did that and now you're doing that. But actually, all along our lives, we're constantly remapping. At every juncture, even if it's a small remap of, well, I'm going to retrain as, a counsellor, or I'm going to go and do this, and I'm going to do it in my spare time. We're constantly looking and changing and moving in a direction, and we don't even know what the end result is. And I just want to circle back to the psychology, because how much I really disliked psychology when I started understanding this paradigm called the 3 principles and sharing it with people. I realized, oh, that's why, because this is the answer. it's looking to the health of the individual rather than the symptoms, and everything else I'd ever come across is really looking at the symptoms, how to manage, how to cope, how to change. And yet this understanding isn't about any of that. It's looking at the true nature of the human being and the essence of them, and the answers are within that. And so that now I feel like that was an insight, not liking that old paradigm of psychology, and I'm actually glad that I didn't do it. So that was a really long-winded answer. I'm so sorry.
It was great. I loved the fact as well that you just expected, well, you were putting a proposal for 12 weeks and you ended up with 12 months. Oh, that's just amazing.
Yeah, absolutely amazing. And it was because, so serendipitously, we never know what else is going on, do we, outside of our own. And there was a local prison that had closed down, and so there was an underspend in the county council's funding for drug treatments. So they had an underspend that they wanted to spend. So, and you know, I didn't even know how much that underspend was or anything. And I showed up and gave a proposal that was the right amount and ended up with the underspend. And then they had an underspend for the next year as well. So I ended up getting that year. But one of the things is that it's a really funny story about Jack Pransky, if you'd like me to tell you.
Yeah, no, carry on, yeah.
So Jack Pransky is an author and a teacher of this understanding, and he's Dr. Jack Pransky. So you know he's got his doctor's degree or whatever, doctorate, and he knew a friend of mine in Birmingham, and I introduced him to the man that I met, who I was inspired by. Because he wanted someone to make a film of Modelo, and so he was a filmmaker, and so I introduced them through LinkedIn. I didn't know Jack Pransky. I'd seen him once at an event, and I'd read his book. Somebody should have told us. So I introduced those two people. That project didn't take off, but he told that guy that he was doing a European tour. And so he said, well, you're going to meet with Jacqueline. And I said, don't be daft. Like, why would Jack Pransky come to Birmingham, to meet with me? Anyway, the next thing is he emails me and says, yeah, let's meet up. I can meet you on these dates when I'm between London and somewhere else, and I'm giving these talks. And I said, oh, wow. Yeah, okay then. And he said, and do you have a spare room? So because he was trying to keep costs down on his trip. So I said, yeah, of course you can come stay in our spare room. So he came, and me and the friend whose name is Janet, we all went out and we had a nice dinner and came back, and he met Rob, and he stayed in our spare room. And when he went to bed, it was a flat in Birmingham we used to live in. We went downstairs, and Rob said, so how do you know this guy? And I said, I don't. He said, so we've got some bloke in our spare room that you have no idea who he is. So, well, I've seen him at a few events. I think he's all right. Anyway, so that was just completely, a random event to have happened about a year before. So when all this kicked off with the potential projects, one of the things that I obviously we were friends then, so I got in touch with Jack and said, wow, you never guess what, I'm taking the principals into prison. And he said, Jacqueline, you want to put your name on the map? And I thought, I don't even know what you mean. And he said, make it a research project. I was like, oh yeah, what a good idea. So I went back to our contact and said, would you like me to make this a research project? He said, I automatically assumed you'd be evidencing. And so it turned into a research project. and Jack and a colleague of his called Professor Tom Kelly helped me write the papers from, you know, it helped me write 3 papers, in fact, because we ended up also getting some work with the prison for sexual offences next door. So we ended up writing 3 papers. And again, all those random things that just come together, you know, we think we're so in charge of our life and we're on this journey and we've got it mapped out. And actually, you know, there's random things or serendipitous moments or things that we say yes to that end up impacting something down the line. You know, there was never any thought in my head that I was going to do a research project or write a paper. And then when I did need to, because I'd been kind to this stranger, he ended up helping me with it. So it's amazing, isn't it?
It is. I was thinking of the word serendipity while you were talking. It was all very serendipitous. But and it's so hilarious that Rob didn't know who this strange man was. He just like picked up some strange bloke off the street and put him up in your house, basically.
That's what it felt like. Yeah, some strange bloke that flown in from the States. Yeah, I know. And I think when I forget that, I get more and more into trying to make something happen or trying to plan something out, and all, you know, all sorts of things can happen along the way that you think take you off track, but actually that is part of your track, and that can be painful things, and that can be random things, and so on, and you think, oh no, you know, I'm taken off track. And I'll give a little example. When my dad died, he was basically an arse and not a very nice person, and a cause of a lot of the trauma from my childhood and my young adulthood as well. And when we reconnected, he'd been on this amazing journey of his own where he'd become a shaman and he'd done all sorts of spooky stuff, I called it, you know, and he'd done NLP and EFT and crystals, and he was having regression therapy, and he'd become a hypnotherapist. He was a hypnotherapist by trade. And when I knew him before, he was a salesperson. And anyway, so he was this hypnotherapist, and he'd written stuff, and yeah, you know, like he was doing this good work in the world. And so part of where I am now is because of reconnecting with him. Firstly, because he had cancer, and he didn't want to die, and he fought it to the last breath. I mean, it was painful for both of us, but he kept saying, my work's not finished. My work's not finished. And after he died, I was still in IT at this point, and I was clearing out his house, and I found this newsletter, and I read this newsletter, and I thought, wow, like this is unusual. And the newsletter was from Michael Neill. So I then looked on the Michael Neill website, and that's how I then eventually got onto the super coach. And after I'd been on super coach and everything, I remember sitting in my comfy chair in the corner looking out at the birds, and I had a picture of my dad on the windowsill, and he suddenly said, I'm proud of you, Jack. Right. And I totally heard his voice. Now, my dad has never said that in the whole of my life. It doesn't matter how many degrees you get. Like, it was never, he said all sorts of nasty things to me. And he said, I'm proud of you, Jack. And it was his voice, and he would call me Jack. And I realized my dad in the spirit world could be a way better dad to me than he was in the real world, or in the world that we know in the form. And also that I was carrying on his work.
That's giving me goosebumps.
And so I realized, like, I didn't even have a choice. It wasn't even my choice to be on this path. That was the path. And so I really see that things that we think that get in the way, or things that we think are stopping us, that it's just all part of it. It's just because we don't know what the big picture is. And the more that we can surrender to that and see it as part of the unknown picture, the less suffering that we have, and the more grace that we have in that situation. And we're able to actually see what the opportunities are there.
Yeah, it just making me think of my own experience where I sort of fought against, I've worked in the same company since 1993, and I knew sort of like a few years in that I should leave, but I never did because I just had the fear and it never felt like the right time. And then when I got to sort of 2019, I got the opportunity of redundancy and took it. And it's the best thing I ever did. And I feel like a new person. I almost feel like the last 20 odd years have almost been wiped off. I've got a totally new slate now.
Yeah, nice.
So yeah.
Nice. And what's interesting is, as you go along your journey, in the same way that I've come to certain points where I've gone, wow, I'm so glad that I did project management because that's really useful right now. Or I'm so glad that I knew about this. And so all the skills, I would have said I wasted that 20 years, in a job in several jobs that I didn't like. And teaching, I mean, I really didn't like computers. And so it felt like that. But actually, I learned loads and loads of things that I use now that are helpful to me now. So nothing's wasted. No. Even when we think we should have got out. Ooh.
That was my dog, sorry. That was my dog.
That really scared me.
I'll let you carry on talking. I'll let her go outside. So carry on talking. Oh, dear.
She joins in. She's got something to say about that. Yeah, so really seeing that it's all part of the tapestry. All of it is, even the things that we think that we should have done this sooner, or it all is perfect because it's what's in front of us right now, and it not having judgment about that helps us to see why it was useful. And there's an inaugural speech by Bill Gates at Stanford University, which is from about 1994 or something like that. It's an old one. It's really worth watching because he talks about you can only join the dots looking backwards. You just can't see them moving forwards. It seems like you're in a situation, why am I here? And you won't know. Looking back, then you get to see, oh yeah, if I didn't do that, that wouldn't have happened, and then that, and I wouldn't have known about that, and and so I think where we can, if we can just embrace wherever we're at, and to have the grace of realizing that we don't know what the purpose is, it helps us to be able to live into that purpose more fully.
That's great. Are there any questions from anybody?
From my little tiny audience.
Anybody would like to ask anything?
The thing I got from what you were saying, Jacqueline, was don't do it for the achievement, do it for the experience. Yeah, lovely. That's really good. Yeah, lovely. Yeah. So you don't need to achieve status, job titles. But if you do it for the experience.
Yeah.
And good or bad, but there's always something to learn. Always something to learn.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's great. It's good. Excellent. Thank you both. Yeah.
Yeah, I felt the same, like doing it for the experience, and it just kind of made me sort of reflect as well, like how often I and lots of others, I'm sure, kind of maybe look in the wrong direction, and you look in that direction of, oh, I want this house, I want this money, I want that status, and that's kind of what we sort of judge our success by, isn't it, so much of the time. And then often we do find that you might get one or both or all of those things that you want, and still there's something missing from that. And yeah, it just seems like the way of the world, doesn't it? And I love that you're coming from this different place, because it gives so much hope, doesn't it, that actually you can just kind of follow what you the path for you, without kind of judging yourself by how much of X have I achieved and stuff. So yeah, I love that.
There's when I was going through all of that change, I was really financially struggling, and I had this amazing like executive apartment in a posh area in Birmingham, and a convertible car on the drive that I couldn't even afford to put petrol in. And you know, like I had these, like I had a baby grand piano in the corner of my room, and you know, art, and had all this stuff that I'd accumulated and built, thinking I was building security and building this castle of whatever, you know, material wealth and material things. But I was actually not at all well off. You know, like when the market crashed, basically I lost my homes, and I lost everything, and then I got made redundant, and I literally overnight lost everything. And for a long time, actually for at least 12 months, I fought that in every way. Like, who will I be if I haven't got this? Where will I live if I don't live here? You know, I struggled and fought it. And then one day I thought, oh, it's because I think if I don't live here in this really nice posh place, I'm going to be on the streets, or I'm going to live in, you know, I've lived in some really terrible places as well. Like, I'm going to live in a place where there's burnt out cars outside my door. I think if I haven't got this, I'm going to have that. I thought, well, that doesn't make sense. Like, why would I do that? You know, I don't need to do that. And that realization really shook me up, and I was like, right, let it go. Just let it all go. And I'd only just met Rob. I think I had one date with him, and on the second date, and he knew all about this. You know, I was up front and said, don't be fooled by the Audi TC on the drive. I can't even drive it. Like, I'm walking with my rucksack to the shops to get my shopping because I can't afford to drive the car. And he came around on this second date, and I'd sold the baby grand piano and the paintings that were above it. And he came around and he sat on the sofa, and I plastered this great big map of the world on the wall. And I said, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to travel the world because I've never done that. I'm going to go on a ship, you know, make my way, and I can do coaching, and I can do bar work, and I can do all sorts of jobs that I've done in the past. I'm going to pay my way around the world. I'm going to visit all those people I met at Supercoach, because they're all in Europe and the States, and I'm going to stay with them, you know, and I'm just going to bum around the world for a couple of years. Like, why not? And he was like, you're crazy. Anyway, that was my plan. And so when I first met Rob, for the first sort of 3 months of dating, I was saving every single penny. So if I thought about buying a cup of coffee, which I couldn't really afford to do, I would save that £2.50 because I'd thought about it and I'd sort of spent the money in my head. So if I took a pair of, you know, socks back to the shop, when I got the refund, I'd save that, because I'd go, well, you've spent that, so save it. So I saved every single penny that I could, and I had this plan of how I was going to travel the world and do all these things. And then I fell in love with Rob, and I didn't want to go anywhere without Rob. So I was like, okay, we'll shelve that, then we'll do something else. So, you know, then this journey was starting, and so on. And what I realised in 2016-17 was I went, in those 2 years, I went to Cape Town, Prague, Los Angeles, Spain, I'll probably forget somewhere, Norway, many places to speaking events that I was invited to speak at. I travelled the world, and I thought, wow, like that dream where I thought I was going to do that, and then I was like, no, right, I'm not doing that because I love Rob. And then that came back round, and I did end up doing it just in a different way. Isn't that amazing?
It's really amazing, yeah.
I know.
Awesome.
I love that. And I think that's happening all the time without us realizing. We have that intention, we have that dream, we put something out there. It doesn't really pan out the way we think it will, but it has a way of coming back round to us and maybe appearing in a different form. Is there anything else you want to know?
Anyone else in the panel like to know anything else?
I like the panel.
My esteemed colleagues.
Does Molly the dog want to know anything else?
Oh, yes, Molly, what would you like to say? You already said quite enough. Never work with children and animals. That's what they say, isn't it?
Yes.
Good grief. I was ignored. She's been wrecking my conservatory furniture while I've been on the phone, and luckily it's old conservatory furniture, so it's not the end of the world. But I was like looking at nothing. I can't react. I can't react. Be looking professional and start shouting, Molly, stop it.
I could tell you a little bit about my new thing as an author.
Okay. Yes, definitely.
So one of the journeys that I've been on, and a bit like Kate and Wendy were saying, is that I just do things because for the experience of it. I really rarely do anything for any other purpose. It's just like, oh, I've started a YouTube channel. I started running, and I've started a YouTube channel about the running just because, like for no other reason, but just to do it and experience it. And the writing was similar. So I had loads of notes from the prison program, and like groups and blogs that I'd done and things like that, and didn't see myself as a writer, but I just had like boxes and boxes of all these notes. And people kept saying, oh, can't wait for your book to come out, when are you going to write a book, and so on. And one day a couple of years ago I thought maybe I could write a book. And so I got out all of these notes, and they were actually, I thought they were a book, but they were actually just loads of notes. And I have a friend who's an author, and she kept saying, come on, get yourself together, write a book, come on a writing retreat with me. And we'd moved to where we live now, and she came round, and as it happened, she was going on a writing retreat down the road in the next village to me, which is a massive coincidence because she lives in Birmingham and I live near Northampton. And so she said, we're doing this writing retreat in March 19, do you want to come? And she went away, and it was all meant to be on a barge and things. And I thought, I don't know that I want to be on a barge with 6 people that I don't know for a week. Like, I don't know. The writing retreat that I thought of was like, in France with like, beautiful fields and your own in the chateau or something. It's like a barge that didn't really fit my thing. So I said, I'm not really keen on that idea. But I realised, but I think probably I need some help. And then, of course, when you start thinking about something, you see it everywhere. So I was getting emails about writing retreats, and there were all these 3 principles people that were doing writing courses and stuff, and none of them appealed. And then a friend of mine, Christine, said, I'm about to start this writing program with a woman who I think you'll like. And she sent me the details. I was like, yeah, but it's in the evening. I don't want to tie up another evening. And then it turned out this woman, Jules Swales, had seen me at a conference when one of our guys spoke there, David Saunders. And I thought, oh, well, okay then, because like she'll understand where I'm at then. And then it turned out she had some shared experiences in her past like mine. I was like, obviously I meant to do this course then. So I jumped on that course, and I've been working with her now for a while, and she's actually my writing coach, and she's a story editor and so on. So I did a few of her courses. But in the summer last year, we did a summer school, and there were 8 people, and the writing, it was like a refresher. The writing every week, because you read out your stories every week, and the writing was just incredible. And I kept saying to people, oh, you should publish that. Oh, you should publish that. And they were like, oh, yeah, no, not really a writer. So at the end of the course, I said, we should publish a book about our 5 weeks together, a piece from each week from each of us. Jules can write an introduction to what the lesson is, and just means that we could all have a book published, you know, and it will serve the world. And 6 of those people said, yeah, that's a good idea. And so we all got together and we planned it and we did all these things. And then one of the ladies, whose name is Maria, decided that she was going to set up a publishing press. So off the back of that, she set up her own publishing press. So she's going to publish our first book, A Different Story, which is coming out at the end of February.
Brilliant.
and then on there, look, you can see my author name, JB Hollows.
Yes, wow. That's amazing.
Isn't that amazing? So it's another story of just taking those next steps and just following that thing. And, you know, you have ideas. Like I know Kate, she's like an idea machine, you know, like you have ideas all the time. And me too. And I couldn't possibly follow all of them. But the ones that pull you, you know, follow that. And who knows where it will go, but follow it for the experience, follow it for the joy of trying something different. And I didn't know someone was going to end up setting up a publishing press because of an idea of let's all put our work in a book. And I did think there would be a book at the end, but I'm actually still quite surprised to feel that in my hand and know that that's an actual book that's going to be on bookshelves and on Amazon, and, you know. So yeah, go for it. Whatever it is, go for it.
I think that's the thing. I think a lot of people don't do things because of fear of failure, and that can be quite debilitating in its own regard.
Yeah,
you know, you just feel the fear and do it anyway.
Well, yeah, but also if it's play, you're not failing. If, you know, when you see a child in the sandpit or playing with the Play-Doh, or, you know, like doing what they do, drawing, they don't care about staying in the lines. They don't care about you trying to put the square in the circle hole, or, you know, that the unicorn isn't supposed to be dressed like a princess. They just do it. They just play and they experiment and they try things out. And I think that's what I've learned. I mean, Pete talked about that, having an event where we just all go and be kids again. And absolutely, it's like that's available now. Yeah, it'd be amazing to have an event to show that to people. But if you're playing, I never think about, like with this, it was just like, oh, let's see what happens then, you know. And then I've learned loads. Oh my God, I've learned so much. You know, about keywords and searches and publishing rockets and all sorts of weird things that I didn't know before. And then all of a sudden there's this. But if there wasn't this, I still would have learned loads of stuff along the way, and that would feed into something else. So I never ever see anything as failure. It might not go where you think it should go, but it has its own life until it doesn't. And sometimes things come back round. You know, I've had ideas that I've plastered them. I wish you could see my wall has just got like big massive post-it notes with little post-it notes all over them. I've plastered walls with post-it notes, and then that idea's just sort of gone by the wayside for a little while. But at some point, that will come back in some form. It might not be that original form, and it might not look like the way I thought it would originally, but it will come around. And so I never worry about that. I just go as far as it has energy, and then I stop. I was recently turned down to work in a prison that I've worked with before, and they've just got too much on, and they've had a death in custody, and they've just got so much on with COVID, and they've just said it's not a priority. And at first I was really disappointed, really, really disappointed. And I realized the reason why I was so disappointed is because I've spent 10 months trying to get into that prison, and it felt like an effort at every single step. And I actually thought, this is a gift, because it was going to continue to be an effort because I was pushing it. Now you go somewhere else, like I've got an email in my inbox from another prison who's gone, wow, we love this thing. Yes, when can we talk? And, you know, how soon can you deliver it to us? No pushing, just saying, oh, here's a pack, have a look at this. And I still keep learning that lesson for myself, is that when you're pushing water up a hill, the only way it's going to go is back down again. It just doesn't work. But when you go where the flow is, then that thing will transpire into something, you know, may not look like the way you think it should look, but it will transpire into something.
Or trust the good feeling.
Yeah,
well.
yeah, definitely.
Ignore the bad ones. Or try to.
Well, yeah, just accept that they're part of it. I have doubts and wonder, you know, am I doing this? Should I be doing that? And I recalibrate at times, and I'll often say, you know, that I run a webinar on a Monday night called Wisdom Entrepreneurs, and I've been running that now for 3 years. And I've often said, and it's a free webinar, and I used to run it on my own, and it used to take a lot of effort. It still takes a lot of effort, actually. But I'll often check in and say, am I still meant to be doing this? Like, has this served its purpose and now it's done? And usually when I genuinely ask that question, when I'm genuinely at the end of, you know, 2 people turned up and I don't know if this has got legs anymore, something will happen. Like one week I thought that, and that very evening a woman came on whose son had gone to prison, and she needed desperately some help around that. And there was one other person and her, and we all had this amazing conversation, and she felt way better afterwards. And I thought, well, that's a sign, you know, or something else will happen to show me, no, that's still valuable. So I'll often check in with myself, and sometimes when I check in myself, I'm like, oh no, you don't need to do that anymore. You can just stop doing that now. And that feeling gives you the indicator, doesn't it, Anne-Marie? You know, it sort of tells you, like, hang on, definitely, there's something going on here, and look at that.
And the biggest lesson you've taught me, Jacqueline, was when you said, just ignore, don't act on a bad feeling. Act on the good feelings. And I know I used to always act on a bad feeling because I felt like it was my gut. Yes. But it wasn't my gut, it was just anger. Yeah. I was mistaking anger as being a gut feeling.
Perfect. So, brilliant example. Yeah.
Has anybody else got anything to ask before we sign off? Is that it? Okay. Well, thank you, Jacqueline. Next week I'll be speaking to Omar.
Yeah.
Omar, don't we? Omar Wilson. So that should be fun.
Our brother.
Yeah, and I'll be putting this recording on YouTube and SoundCloud within the next 48 hours. So hopefully there's nothing anybody said here that they don't want recorded. If there is, just let me know. And I'll
Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining me.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye, guys.